Hello friends, welcome to the fabulous world of stories and why we tell them from Kulture Katha. It's amazing how the great epic Mahabharata has caught the imagination of people like no other piece of world literature. The epic has inspired and spawned a whole lot of literature, and some of its ideas such as Parthenogenesis and Niyoga have even found reflection in cinema. In today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the books and movies that were inspired by these ideas from the Mahabharata. In one of my previous videos on Niyoga, you may remember I had mentioned how the practice of junior levirate is still in vogue in some parts of India, particularly among some Jat communities of Haryana. The film Ek Chadar Maili Si tells one such story of a widow who is forced to marry her dead husband's brother, whom she had actually brought up as her own son. The brother-in-law too loves another woman but has to marry his brother's widow, as their community custom of chadar is forced upon them. In the movie, the widow and her brother-in-law turned husband eventually reconcile themselves to their new life together. This movie was based on a novel of the same name by Rajendra Singh Bedi, an Urdu writer and playwright who won the Sahitya Akademi Award for this book. In the Mahabharata, you may remember how Satyavati expected Bhishma to accept his dead brother's widows. Although not junior levirate, this is an example of the levirate customs that had its seeds in the Rigvedic times. For more on this custom, do check my video on the what's, whys and hows of Niyoga if you have not done so yet. Yet another custom that we know from the Mahabharata, the practice of Niyoga, has fascinated movie makers and literateurs alike. Amol Palekar, a well-known personality from the Marathi and Hindi movie industry, had explored the idea of Niyoga and what it means to the participating woman in his movie Anahat, which means unlimited, infinite or eternal. In this Marathi movie, a childless and aging king is forced to send his wife to a stranger so that she may produce an heir to his kingdom. The movie deals with the emotions of the king and the queen as they reconcile themselves to Niyoga at the insistence of their prime minister. While the king feels totally stripped of his manliness as he consents to the plan, the queen is horrified by the idea and asks the prime minister how she could be expected to have intercourse with a total stranger. Have I no right over my body? Have I no right to disagree with this arrangement? She asks. But the twist in the story comes after Niyoga is performed. The queen confesses to her maid that she had experienced sexual pleasure for the first time during the act of Niyoga with a young man, pleasure that her elderly husband had never been able to give her. The movie, as you can see, explores the idea of Niyoga from a woman's point of view. In the epic too, we find that neither Ambika nor Ambalika was given a choice. They were expected to receive Vyasa and produce progeny for the royal family. No questions asked. Yet another interesting aspect you may remember from the Niyoga video is that pleasure and gratification were not the key goals of this practice. The key objective was to produce progeny. The act, therefore, had to be performed dispassionately by both the partners. But is it even possible for one to be truly and completely in control of one's feelings and emotions? In Anahat, clearly the queen fails to do so, and the night of Niyoga changes her perspective of life and her expectations from it. Yet another movie that dabbled with the idea of Niyoga was Eklavya in Hindi, that starred Amitabh Bachchan in a key role. Sadly, the movie did not focus on exploring the concept and its practice much, but instead chose to follow the commercial path of melodrama and more drama. But in more recent times, one author has beautifully explored the idea of Niyoga and what it implies for the husband and wife involved. Yes, I am talking of Perumal Murugan and his work Madhurubahan in Tamil, or its English translation, One Part Woman. This work raked up a lot of controversy as the author claimed that he had based the book on the history of a particular community based in Tamil Nadu. Let's not get bogged down over the issues of the historicity of its contents. Let's instead focus on the story and its telling that is sheer magic, as the author transports us to a small farming community in hinterland India. There live Ponna and Kali, a couple madly in love with each other. Unfortunately, they are childless, and being childless in a rural agrarian setup in the olden times was almost a sin. The author tells us about the travails of Ponna and Kali, who are mercilessly persecuted by kith, kin and strangers for their childlessness. Insults and wounding words are heaped on them day in and day out, to the point that Kali's mother finally decides to send his wife Ponna to a temple fair where it was common for complete strangers to come together for a single night of pleasure. Kali is of course dead against sending his wife Ponna to another man, even if it meant that all his life problems would be solved at one stroke. What transpires thereafter is beautifully narrated by Perumal Murugan. Friends, what Madhurubahan does is throw light on why a society would think of a custom such as Niyoga. In an agrarian society where the land is transmitted to the children after the death of the father, being childless was unthinkable. If childlessness was such an extreme inconvenience for a small farmer such as Kali, one can imagine why heirless kings resorted to this act to save their kingdoms. While many filmmakers and writers have been obsessed with Niyoga, not too many have explored the idea of Parthenogenesis in Indian cinema. Parthenogenesis, as we have already seen in the video on the birth of the Pandavas, is a form of reproduction where an embryo is formed without the involvement of the male. I recently came across a Tamil movie that deals with this concept in an interesting manner. This film is titled Oru Pakka Kadai, meaning a one-page story. In the movie, set in the contemporary times, a virgin girl suddenly becomes pregnant and gives birth to a girl child. The child and the mother are perceived as a medical miracle and are promptly appropriated by religious institutions that want to use the child to further their own agenda. What follows is the story that deals with the emotions of the mother, the adopted father, and the child, all of whom suffer at the hands of religious politics. Do check out these movies and books if you're interested. Anahat, Chadar Maili Si and Eklavya are available on YouTube, the links for which I have shared in the description box below. Oru Pakka Kadai is streaming on an OTT platform. And friends, if you do know of any other books or movies that deal with the ideas of Niyoga or miraculous births, please do let us know by sharing them in the comment section below. Till we meet again over yet another interesting video from the Mahabharata series, it's tada bye bye, take care.
ah